Hey guys, welcome to today's video. It's going to be a little bit of a different video. It's going to be a mock draft, first mock draft after free agency. We've got Baskin here on the channel. Before we get started, please drop a quick like and a sub on today's video. It would really help my channel out. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, let's dive right into the video, and I hope you enjoy. But we're going to dive right in here. First pick, Baskin's on the clock. Who are you taking?
All right. My name is Andrew Baskin. I'm a friend of Adam and also a huge football fan. And with the first pick, it's obvious the Jaguars will be taking Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. He had another great year as he did his first 2 years at Clemson. And he, in my opinion, is the obvious first overall quarterback, better than Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. I mean, he's good in all facets of the game. He's a decent scrambler, very accurate, good arm strength, and he's a very prototypical modern-day quarterback. Reminds a lot of people of Andrew Luck, and I think he could have similar production on this Jags team. They're probably not going to go 11-5, but I think they'll be a lot better next year, and maybe they go 6-10, 7-9. So I think this is a home run pick for the Jaguars. I think Urban Meyer and the Jags will be, and all Jags fans will be very happy with Trevor Lawrence going first overall.
So now let's move on to the New York Jets. And I think the Jets have got to go quarterback here because, I mean, Sam Darnold isn't going to cut it. So let's just take a little look at the quarterback options. It's really going to be between Wilson, Fields, and Lance. And in my opinion, I do think Wilson is probably the best guy available, but I want to go out and give the Jets Trey Lance. And the reason I want to give them Trey Lance is because I love the potential.
Pick, Adam. Ballsy pick.
I want to give them the potential that Trey Lance comes with. We saw him at his pro day, and wow, he was throwing the ball really well across the field, showing off, his accuracy downfield. And that's like his big concern. The big concern is the accuracy, but the measurables are there. The guy's fast, he's physical, he's athletic, and in a way, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Josh Allen. Just coming out of college, he was raw but super physically gifted, and those physical skill sets are something that I think could set him apart from guys like Wilson and Fields. So I think that the Jets going and getting Trey Lance would make a lot of sense at pick 2. Let's go number 3 of the Dolphins now. Who are you going to take for my team?
I know this is ACB Sports, Adam Beck's favorite team, and I know he would probably more want a wide receiver or tackle, but I don't think 2 is the answer. And we saw the Arizona Cardinals, they had Josh Rosen, who had an up-and-down rookie year, and they ended up picking, obviously, Kyler Murray, and that was home run. I think Zach Wilson could do the same thing. So Zach Wilson's going to go here number 3. And I think Zach Wilson is the clear number 2 QB on the board. So if he falls past 2, I think the Dolphins, if they didn't trade this pick, which I think most likely they do, but we're not going to do trades in this mock draft. But I think most likely they would draft Zach Wilson at a BYU who showed immense potential this year. And I think he's more similar to Josh Allen than Trey Lance. And he's less, I think Trey Lance is definitely a faster QB, but I think Zach Wilson has better throw power. And I think he is more. I think his speed will still be great in the NFL. I think his accuracy is better than Trey Lance, and I don't really care that he's going to a smaller school. Obviously, Trey Lance is too, but big school QBs fail, in my opinion, just as often as these small school QBs. And I believe that Zach Wilson would be a great fit on the Dolphins, throwing the ball to Devontae Parker and now Will Fuller, and I think he'd light it up his rookie year. I think it'd be a home run pick.
Interesting pick there. I don't know how to feel about that. I definitely am a big Tua guy, but now let's move to the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons, for me, their offense is fine. And I know Matt Ryan, there's questions about his future. There's questions about if the Falcons decide to go out and get a quarterback here. But I think they really need to address the defense. And in this draft, there's been a lot of talk about there's no player on the defense side of the football that's worth a top 5, maybe even top 10 pick. But if there is a guy, it would have to be, Patrick Surtain, who I think is absolutely a phenomenal corner out of Alabama. Let's just scroll down to him right here, pick 16 here. But Patrick Surtain, what I love about him is his physicality. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jalen Ramsey. And hold up for a second before you guys get mad at me. I can already see Baskin over there. He's like, Jalen Ramsey. What are you,
Jalen Ramsey?
Like, what are you talking about? Now, the thing I love about Surtain is his physicality. I mean, he's so physical in man coverage. Kind of reminds me of Jalen Ramsey. If you watch his tape, especially against the Bucks, where he matched up against Mike Evans this year, a lot of that you can see in Patrick Surtain's game. The only question mark with him is that high-end speed. Doesn't have that elite speed, but nonetheless, the physicality is there. And I think he's probably the best corner in this draft over a guy like Farley, who, has had injury concerns throughout his collegiate career. And with the Falcons, their pass defense was absolutely horrendous last year. I think it was the second worst in the NFL, only to the Cowboys. The need for a corner is necessary. So I think Surtain makes a lot of sense.
I will be picking number 5, and for the 5th pick, I will be taking Ja'Marr Chase, reuniting him with Joe Burrow. And I think this is an obvious pick here. I think the Bengals are still needing that number 1 receiver. I think T. Higgins is a great player. I think Tyler Boyd's a great player. And I think those 3 together with Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, they still don't really have a tight end, but that can be addressed later in this draft or something. But we're not drafting past the first round, but second, third, fourth round, etc. But Ja'Marr Chase is a great receiver. I think he's the best receiver in this draft. He's a decent route runner. He has good speed. And he played great with Joe Burrow at LSU. They had the best season of all time in college. So I think reuniting this QB and receiver would be a great fit for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I think that, they might need some help at the offensive line position, maybe at tight end. But I think, Ja'Marr Chase and that Joe Burrow connection, that could be really deadly there in Cincinnati. At number 6, it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. And for them, they definitely do need a corner. That's something that they could go after. But I think a wide receiver also makes sense here. And the 2 guys that you have to really look at is Jaylen Waddle and Devonta Smith. And I think Devonta Smith would be absolutely scary in that Eagles, passing game. We saw, Devonta Smith absolutely light it up last year with a Heisman Trophy winning season. So I think that in the Philadelphia passing game would be absolutely phenomenal. You pair him next to Travis Fulgham, you pair him next to Jalen Reagor. I think he could really take off with his speed and his, ability after the catch too, to really expand the field. The only concern with him is just his size. I mean, he's definitely a smaller guy, not super big physically, but nonetheless, the speed and the athleticism he possesses is something that's really exciting to watch. And I think that could be really big for that Eagles passing game.
Yeah, I mean, no problem for me. The only concern is Howie Roseman can't draft any receivers. So I would almost not want Devonta Smith to go to the Eagles so he wouldn't be cursed. But overall, a great pick. And to the Lions, I will also go with a receiver. I'm going to go with Jaylen Waddle, who I think has the possibility to be the best receiver in the class. Kind of reminds me of Tyreek Hill. He's not exactly as good as Tyreek Hill, but he does almost everything the same on the field. He's not Henry Ruggs. He's not John Ross. He can run routes, and his speed is electric. He can catch the ball, I think, at a much better level than those 2 players. And I think in Detroit, they're needing a top receiver. They lost Kenny Golladay. They lost Marvin Jones, and they haven't really had that speed guy, at least in a long time, in my opinion. So I think pairing Jaylen Waddle with a guy like Jared Goff would be a good fit. I don't think Jared Goff is as bad as people think, so I wouldn't have Justin Fields going here. But overall, I think he needs a receiver. He needs someone to throw the ball to. I'm going with Jaylen Waddle with the 7th pick.
My only concern with that pick is I don't love taking speed guys in the first round. I mean, we've seen how that's played out in recent history. Guys like John Ross, even a guy like Hollywood Brown. I don't know if he was really worth a first round pick, but nonetheless, Waddle is definitely a guy that could, be a really, really solid player at the NFL level. Pick number 8 now, it's going to be the Carolina Panthers. And it's got to be a quarterback here. And I think, Justin Fields makes a ton of sense. We've seen this offseason, they've kind of told everyone, and I mean, they haven't publicly said it, but they've kind of said that they're going to move on from Teddy Bridgewater, or at least that's what they're trying to do. They've been in the rumors for, Deshaun Watson. They've been really trying to move on from Bridgewater quarterback. And I think Justin Fields is arguably the second best quarterback in this draft class. I think he's probably quarterback 2B or 2A. I think him and, Zach Wilson are definitely in that conversation. I know Baskin definitely has Justin Fields a lot lower on his.
I'm not a huge Justin Fields fan, but Teddy B he's not that good. So makes sense here.
On his radar. But I mean, nonetheless, I think Fields and his ability, the truth is, I mean, Fields, number 1, he can throw the ball pretty well. And number 2, he can run the ball really well too. So even if that, maybe he doesn't have that elite arm, but that, average to above average arm he has doesn't really work out in the NFL, then he could end up more, like a Jalen Hurts type. But I still think that arm is a lot better than Jalen Hurts. And I see him, kind of moving on to the NFL level as a kind of a worse version of Kyler Murray. Doesn't have that elite arm talent deep downfield, but nonetheless, for the Panthers at number 8, I think Justin Fields is an absolute steal.
Now we're going to go pick number 9, and this is my favorite team, the Denver Broncos. And Micah Parsons, he's had some problems off the field, a little bit of hazing, and that gets a little complicated. But I think we could use a linebacker next to A.J. Johnson in our 3-4 defense. So I'm going to pick Micah Parsons here. He's a great run stopper. my opinion, pass coverage could need some improvement. I don't really think he's an outside. I think he could be a middle linebacker. He made profiles more as an outside linebacker, but I think he could fit that role on our team. And AJ Johnson's decent in pass coverage, so I think they could work well together. I think Micah Parsons, he's a guy who many people may say he's good at a bunch of things, but he's the master of none, kind of like Isaiah Simmons in that forefront. But I think he'd be a good selection here to the Broncos, who definitely need to go defense, because I think our offense, we have good receivers. QB is not so good, but I don't think Mac Jones really deserves a top 10 pick. So I'm going to be going Micah Parsons here, number 9.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. He's up there among the best defensive players in the draft. At pick 10, though, it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys. And you see Penei Sewell still on the board, which is a little bit surprising. I thought he could have gone maybe number 3 to the Dolphins, maybe number 5 to the Bengals. He slips all the way to number 10 to the Cowboys. And I think Sewell to the Cowboys makes sense. Cowboys had a lot of problems on that offensive line last year. They had a lot of injuries. And, they need a guy that can either play left tackle. I mean, Tyron Smith, we've seen how that's been going the past few years. Was obviously injured last year, but nonetheless, I think that they could put Sewell either at left tackle, maybe at guard, but they could put him in a variety of positions because of his unique athleticism. So I think Sewell, and his ability to run block too, could really help that Cowboys run game for Ezekiel Elliott. But overall, I just love the freakish athleticism that Sewell brings to the table, and I think it's crazy that he falls all the way to pick 10. So now we move on to pick 11. Baskin, you're on the clock. What are we thinking here?
All right, so pick 11, going to the Giants right here. And I'm not a huge fan of Evan Ingram. I live in New Jersey, even though I'm a Bronco fan, which for some people it's a little bit weird, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But I think Evan Ingram, I had season tickets to the Giants last 2 years, and Evan Ingram doesn't usually catch the ball. He's very fast. He's not very good at blocking. He just seems to get open and drop the ball. So Kyle Pitts is actually a guy who catches the ball. He can block a little. He could even play receiver. And I think going next to Kenny Golladay and going next to Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, I think that's going to get scary. And I think if Daniel Jones can show some form of improvement this year, I think that Giants team with Kyle Pitts and Golladay, I think they could even win the NFC East, which is still terrible.
Okay, I love the pick there. I think I put that in one of my previous mock drafts. But nonetheless, exciting pick. Now we're on to pick number 12, where it's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. And the big thing for them is they lost, their 2 best corners this offseason. They obviously lost Richard Sherman. He actually hasn't re-signed as of this video being recorded currently. But they also lost their best man coverage corner in Ahkello Witherspoon to the Seattle Seahawks. So I think Caleb Farley makes a ton of sense here. He could probably be a top 10 pick anyway. And, his ability to just be sticky in man coverage makes sense for this 49ers team. Another thing with Farley, though, I mean, there have been some injury concerns, throughout his time at Virginia Tech, but nonetheless, he's definitely up there with Surtain as one of those, elite corners in this draft class. So I think, Farley fits in with that 49ers need for a quality corner.
I got the Chargers here at 13, and we're going to go with a little bit of a surprise. We're going to go Alijah Vera-Tucker. And right now their left guard is like O'Shea Abushi or something. He's not very good, and they don't really have anyone behind him. They lost Trey Turner because he wasn't so good last year. They signed him. They traded for him with Russell Okung, and that didn't really turn out well. So I'm going to go Alijah Vera-Tucker, who's a guy who they have at tackle here, but I think he profiles better at guard than Rashawn Slater, who I think he can play every position. But I think Alijah Vera-Tucker is a guy who's maybe more solid at guard. They can just pencil him in at guard. I think they can still address tackle in a later round. I think this is a deep tackle class. And so I'm going to go Alijah Vera-Tucker, maybe switch it up instead of going a tackle, which maybe every other mock draft. Chargers going left tackle, but they seem to have knock on left tackle for the last few years. So maybe they keep that up and go Alijah Vera-Tucker.
Now let's move to the Minnesota Vikings at pick 14. And I think Rashawn Slater is an absolute steal here. As Baskin said, alluded to a little bit earlier, he thinks Slater could probably play guard. And I think the Vikings need a guard. They also probably do need a left tackle. And I think Slater could be, a guy that you can fit into multiple positions on that offensive line, and he could be really solid on multiple positions on that offensive line. And there's been some arguments that Slater could even be the best, offensive line prospect in this draft. He's super ready for the NFL now. And I did say that, but I did say that about Andrew Thomas last year. I will admit to that.
Yeah, that's a big miss, Adam.
Yeah, this is true. But nonetheless, I think I was with the Giants in that regard. But overall, I think Slater makes sense here to the Vikings. Just fills that need for a guy who can really play at a high level on the offensive line.
All right, so I guess I pick 15 here, which is the Patriots, and I'm gonna have the Patriots go Rashad Bateman, and I think N'Keal Harry, who right now is their big, tall receiver, he's just not very good. They picked him in the first round. Was it last year or 2 years ago? I'm forgetting.
I think it was 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago, and N'Keal Harry hasn't really panned out with that team. He didn't really work with Cam Newton, and I don't think he worked with Tom Brady that well either. And Rashad Bateman's a much better player. He's faster. I think he's a better route runner. He can go up and get the ball. And I think the Patriots are missing a guy like that. They picked up Nelson Aguilar, who's more of a speed guy. He can run in the slot, and Kendrick Bourne, who can run in the slot. And they're going to get Rashad Bateman, who's going to be their big time receiver, who's going to pair up nice with, they got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. So that'd be very exciting for Pats fans, definitely.
Pick 16. Now we're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. For me, the offensive side of the football is looking really, really, really nice. I mean, they brought in Rodney Hudson too. They brought in AJ Green. That offense is going to be scary. However, the defense, they did address, they brought in JJ Watt, but I think they could get better on the defensive side of the football after losing Patrick Peterson. And I think the best corner available has got to be J.C. Horn. I might have to scroll a little bit right here. But J.C. Horn, out of South Carolina, is probably the third best corner in this draft. And he kind of reminds me not of Patrick Peterson, but of that Patrick Peterson ability to really stay with guys in man-on-man coverage, especially in press man coverage. Horn, he's got good ball skills, but overall, he's really sticky in man coverage. And they lost a guy who was really sticky in man coverage in Patrick Peterson. So I think J.C. Horn fits in with exactly what the Cardinals need as a true man coverage corner.
17th of the Raiders. And I believe I have Trevon Moehrig going here, who's a safety out of TCU. And the Raiders really do need, he plays free safety, and right now their starting free safety is Jeff Heath. And if you're a Cowboys fan watching this video, you should know that Jeff Heath is not very good. And on the Raiders last year, he was not very good either. So I think the Raiders, they need a safety. And I think Trevon Moehrig, he's the best safety on the board. I think he's good at pass coverage. He can play the run a little bit. And I think overall, the Raiders, they need to definitely address defense because their offense was good last year. I mean, they lost Nelson Aguilar, but I think in this mock draft, I think going safety when Trevon Moehrig, clear best safety on the board, and they have a huge glaring need at safety, it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, though, let's move to pick 18, where I get to talk about my Miami Dolphins, right? You
finally get to pick for your team. I picked Zach Wilson, which...
Exactly. You botched that pick. So I got to make something right over here. And the big thing about the Dolphins last year was, the defensive side of the football was really keeping them in games. They couldn't move the ball on offense. And one of the reasons they couldn't was the lack of a true great running back. So I know there's a stigma around picking running backs in the first round, but go get Najee Harris. Go get that physical runner who could be really good out of the backfield as a pass catcher. He can do a variety of things. But most importantly, he's a guy that you could really give the ball to, 15 to 20 times a game and get production out of him. So I think, Najee Harris makes a lot of sense for this Miami Dolphins team at pick 18, even if they go Zach Wilson too, because I don't think, they did go out and get Malcolm Brown this offseason in free agency, but I still think that they can go out and, get a true running back to, have in front of Myles Gaskin as well as Savon Ahmed, both of those guys did have some nice games, but they need a running back that could have that 1,000-yard rushing ability. And I think Najee Harris has that.
Yeah, Alabama running backs have been turning out. You got Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Damian Harris isn't too bad on the Pats. So continue with the trend of drafting Alabama running backs. So I like the pick there. 19. Looks like we got football team on the board. Maybe they'll have a team name next year, but I'm going to have them going Mac Jones here because they could use a QB. They got Fitzmagic or occasionally Fitztragic. Adam knows about Fitzmagic and Fitztragic because he was on the Dolphins last year, and he was all right. I think he was better than Tua, but there's a reason they didn't make the playoffs, and it's a little bit on Fitztragic / Fitzpatrick and a little bit on Tua. But I think Mac Jones will fit in here. He's the only QB who's a first-round caliber QB who's not really scrambling QB, but I don't think he's a liability. I think he can still run the ball a little bit. I think he's better than even a guy like Jared Goff or a guy like Matt Stafford. And I think you can be a QB in the NFL now and not be able to run the ball that well. Tom Brady, obviously Drew Brees, And Mac Jones isn't the type of guy like a Tom Brady or Drew Brees. Like, I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think Mac Jones, the football team only needs a solid starting quarterback. And I think Mac Jones can contend for the starting job next year. Maybe he'll sit a year, but I think he may beat out Fitzpatrick once Fitzpatrick blows a few games because he is a little bit turnover heavy. I don't think Heineke's the guy. He showed a little promise in the playoffs there, but it's Taylor Heineke. I mean, come on. He's not a starting quarterback. So we're going to go Mac Jones here.
Now, though, pick 20, Chicago Bears.
Yeah, the Bears are pissed. They don't get Mac Jones.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, they needed a quarterback. Andy Dalton, Nick. That's a whole nother video right there. But pick 20, Chicago Bears on the clock. I think they got to go with the tackle. Their offensive line has been absolutely atrocious the past few seasons, and I think that if they can't end up pulling out some massive trade for Russell Wilson, they're going to still have this pick, so they need to go out and get a true left tackle, and I think Christian Darrisaw is the best available. Really, it's that simple. I think Darrisaw is just, he's the best tackle available. They need a position at left tackle. They need a guy who could just be an absolute star over there. And I think Darrisaw can be an NFL level left tackle. And it's really that simple.
He's a great fit. I'm surprised he fell to 20. With pick 21, I'm going to have Liam Eichenberg staying in the state of Indianapolis, going from Notre Dame to the Colts. I think it's a great fit. He's a great pass protector. And so is Anthony Costanzo, who recently retired, who was their left tackle for around 10 years. I think Liam Eichenberg can come in. He may not be as good as Costanzo, but Costanzo regressed a little bit last year. He's going to be playing with Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith. So I think they're going to help him out a little bit. So I think overall that's a great pick. And I think the Colts need to go tackle. So maybe they'll go another guy, but I like the idea of keeping Liam Eichenberg in the state of Indiana.
At 22, it's going to be the Tennessee Titans. And the big news for them this offseason was they went out and got Bud Dupree, but they also cut Malcolm Butler, and they also cut their other corner. Why is he forgetting my? Wow. There we go. Anyway, so they need to go out and get a corner. And I think that there might not be a corner available right now that is first round caliber, but nonetheless, I like Eric Stokes. And the reason I like Eric Stokes is for, 2 or 3 things. One, his speed. This guy is blazing. I think he ran a 4.25 unofficial 40 time at his pro day, but also he's pretty good in man coverage too. He's sticky because of that, really he's quick. I mean, the guy ran 4.25. So I think those abilities there is really going to help him with the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, Adoree Jackson was a very fast guy. They're replacing him. It's another fast guy in Eric Stokes. I like the move. Okay, now we have the New York Jets, and I'm going to have them taking Travis Etienne, a running back out of Clemson. And Travis Etienne, the Jets really need a running back. I mean, they had Frank Gore last year. And I mean, he was almost 40, and they had a bunch of guys behind him like Lamaje Perine, Josh Adams, and Tyler Johnson, I believe, or Ty Johnson. He's not very good. But overall, the Jets, they really need a running back. They didn't address that for agency. So they're going to go and get possibly the best running back in the draft. To toss up between Etienne and Harris. If you like a guy who's maybe more of a burner, then you go to Etienne, power back, maybe more Harris. But the Jets definitely need big plays, and Etienne gives them that big playability, and definitely a great guy to pair up with. We have them going Trey Lance, so maybe he'll help out Trey Lance, or maybe he'll help out Sam Darnold if Sam Darnold's starting the year as the QB for the Jets.
Yeah, I definitely like that move there for the New York Jets. Now, number 24, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for me, it's got to be their offensive line. And I think I'm going to go out and give them an offensive tackle here, Samuel Cosmi. He was a 3-year starter at Texas. And this guy's good. He's really solid. He's got a natural feel for that tackle position. And at Texas, he was one of the better tackles in the country. So overall, I mean, he's another one of these first round caliber tackles that I think that could really fit into that Steelers offensive line. They definitely need a guy who can, be a really solid player at left tackle. Cosmi, as I said, played really well for 3 seasons as a starter at Texas. So he's got the experience. And he definitely went up against good competition. So I think he fits in well with the Steelers.
Yeah, they have to replace Alejandro Villanueva, who left in free agency. I mean, they could re-sign him, but at this point, I do not believe they will because of their cap problems. So that definitely makes sense there. 25 to the Jags. I'm going to have the Jags. Maybe this is a little bit of a surprise pick, but I like Gregory Rousseau's potential, and I think he's a much better player than K'Lavon Chaisson, who they picked last year, who kind of looks like a bust, or like a Vic Beasley type player. but at least Vic Beasley had a good rookie year. I mean, Chason did nothing, so they replaced him with Gregory Rousseau, who maybe is going to take a little while to gain his full ability. I think right now he's not so good at rushing tackles. He's more better at rushing interior defensive linemen, and that may be a struggle when he enters the league. But he's a good run defender, and he definitely has a lot of potential. He's the highest potential of any pass rusher in the league in this draft right now. And I think the Jaguars are a team that's going to be rebuilding, continued for a few years. So a guy like Gregory Rousseau here makes sense to a rebuilding team because he's a guy with high potential, but he could also easily bust. So it's a good pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now on to the Cleveland Browns at pick 26. And for me, I think they should go after a linebacker. I mean, they addressed the secondary this offseason. They could go after a defensive end, like an edge rusher. But I like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. I think that his ability to be really good in pass coverage and his speed too are something that could really translate well to the NFL level. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous with him is his size. He's kind of a safety playing linebacker, and he's got really good speed because of that. But at the same time, he'd be one of the smaller linebackers at the NFL level. But nonetheless, his speed and his ability to get after the football, especially in pass coverage situations, would really help that Browns secondary take a little bit of the load off them, having a good coverage linebacker that can match up well against running backs or maybe even tight ends.
Yeah, he's the same type of player as Foyesade Olakun on the Falcons, who actually started off as a safety and now plays linebacker, 220 pounds. So a very small guy, but I think he'll fit in with that team. Ravens at 27, I think they need a receiver. They have Hollywood Brown, who in my opinion, he's not so good. He's more like a bad wide receiver too, and Lamar Jackson definitely needs someone to throw the ball to. So I'm going to go Terrence Marshall Jr. here, who I believe is the best fit for that team. He's more of a big receiver at 6'3", but he's not too heavy. He's great speed, good size, good route running. And he was also on that great LSU offense with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And the other two players are very good. Obviously, Jefferson had an amazing year last year, and Jamar Chase is top 5 pick. But I think Terrence Marshall is definitely underrated, and he's learned from those guys, learned from Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and maybe he can bring those skills onto the Ravens, which they desperately need a number 1 receiver or even a number 2 caliber receiver.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I kind of wanted you to give them Kadarius Toney, so you had the Kadarius Toney and Hollywood Brown, but I feel like that might just be the same thing 2.0. So let's talk about the New Orleans Saints here at pick number 28. And for me, I think that they need a guy who can get after the quarterback a little. And I know that Kwity Paye didn't have a ton of production at Michigan in the collegiate level, but nonetheless, the physical traits he has, this guy's an athletic freak, and I think that that's something the Saints can work with. We've seen them go after some really athletic guys in the past. And I think that Kwity Paye, even him falling to 28 might not happen because at his pro day, he's going to have an outrageous, he's going to have an outrageous 40 time. He's going to have an outrageous 3-cone drill because of just he's an athletic monster. So I think those for those reasons, really, I mean, his ability to just be, an athletic freak, will make him go here to the Saints, even though he didn't have super amounts of production at the college level.
Now we got pick 29. It's the Packers. Now I'm going to have them take in a right tackle to replace Ricky Wagner. I think Billy Turner profiles a lot better as a guard. I had them taking Jalen Mayfield there in Michigan. And I think he fits in more as a right tackle than a left tackle. Needs to replace Ricky Wagner. It wasn't that good, but he was all right. They could use a corner or receiver, but I think the receiving room is better than people think. I mean, they got Lazard and they got Marquise Valdes-Scantling, who have both showed some promise last year, and they also got a big Bob Tunyon, who I like a lot. So maybe go after a guy to protect Aaron Rodgers / Jordan Love in the future. So I'm going to go Jalen Mayfield.
Now we go to the Buffalo Bills at pick 30. And I mean, if Travis Etienne was still on the board here, maybe I go with a running back or maybe Najee Harris if either of those guys were still on the board. But I think that, they need a guy who can get after the quarterback a little bit. AJ Epinesa really isn't that guy. Ed Oliver can get at the quarterback a little bit, but they need a real pass rusher. And I don't think Jerry Hughes is going to get any better anytime soon. So I think maybe going out and getting Jaylon Phillips makes some sense here. Azeez Ojulari would be another option. But I just like what Phillips was able to do at the University of Miami last year. There are a little bit of concerns about his size, maybe some of his athleticism. But at the end of the day, production is what counts, and that's what he did at the University of Miami. I think Buffalo will see that, and they definitely need a guy who can get after the quarterback. Jaylon Phillips, did that at the college level, and I think he could do that at the NFL level.
I think if he stays healthy, he could be the best pass rusher in this class. His injuries are obviously a huge concern, but I think in that 4-3, he's a good fit. Kansas City Chiefs here, the obvious pick would be taking a left tackle. They lost Eric Fisher. And then right tackle, they lost, Mitchell Schwartz, and they replaced him with Mike Remmers, who they had on the team last year, and they brought him back. But I'm actually going to go Joseph Osai here to the Chiefs. Defensive end is a problem. Right now they have Frank Clark at one end, and at the other end, they don't really have anyone. They had Alex Okafor for the last few years, and he wasn't very good. So they need a guy to replace Alex Okafor, and a guy who can be better than Alex Okafor. I'm going to go Joseph Osai. I think he has the size to play outside linebacker or defensive end. He can play in a 3-4 or 4-3. I think he's one of the best pass rushers in this class. And I think he's ranked too low. But I like him going here at 31. The Chiefs struggled to get after the Bucs in the Super Bowl. Their pass rush has been a problem over the past few years. So I think addressing the pass rush here in the first round would be a smart move for a team that doesn't have that much cap room. So they couldn't really sign a prolific pass rusher to go on the other side of Frank Clark.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense there. Now let's go to the Bucs at 32. And I was originally going to give them Azeez Ojulari, but I think that Christian Barmore could make a little bit more sense, especially if they don't end up re-signing Ndamukong Suh. As of this video being recorded, Ndamukong Suh hasn't been signed by anyone. But if Ndamukong Suh ends up going to the Bucs, I guess then we give them Azeez Ojulari. But I think Christian Barmore would make sense here, especially if they can't re-sign Suh. You need a guy that you can put next to Vita Vea. And I think Christian Barmore and his ability to really produce at Alabama as a run stuffer, as well as, a little bit getting to the passer too. I just think that, he's by far the best interior defensive guy in this draft class. And I think that he could be a real impact player for that Bucs team at pick 32.
Yeah, he's definitely better than a Nunez Roches, who's the current backup.
So, yeah, if you just want to take a look at our picks here, Trevor Lawrence to the Jags, Jets get Trey Lance, Zach Wilson to the Dolphins, Surtain to the Falcons.
Ooh, you got an F there, Adam.
Yeah, I did get an F.
Jamar F's for me so far. So
Jamar Chase to the Bengals, Devonta Smith to the Eagles, Jalen Waddle to the Lions, Fields to the Panthers, Parsons to the Broncos, Sewell to the Cowboys, Pitts to the Giants. I see a D- for you though.
It looks like they're not a huge fan of my pick of Elijah Vera Tucker there, but
or Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, they don't like JC Horn either. So I don't love PFF. Some of their rankings I think are a little bad. I think they improvement there. Yeah, they didn't like any of our picks there in the 20s, Adam. But
yeah, they definitely liked Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah though.
Yeah, they liked JRE, and they were a fan of Christian Barmore, but I think it's mostly ranked based on how the players are ranked and not really like the draft positions of the team. So don't take too much into those draft grades. I think Surtain could be a good pick at 4, but I would actually take a receiver because I think Julio Jones is still on the decline.
And with that said, that's pretty much going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub on today's video. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.